Good morning, members, and welcome to the first meeting of Dumfries and Galloway Council. As returning officer, I will open up the meeting and chair until I can hand over to the council convener. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the council website for public listening. Remote participants, could you please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. If you are in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad if you so wish. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function, and then join when you rejoin the meeting so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. We have scheduled in a break for lunch around 12 noon, which will be assessed as we proceed through the agenda. Thank you. Can I move to the Sederin apologies and Chair's approval of members' remote participation? Vlad, can you provide the Sederin and any apologies, please?
Thank you, and good morning, members. We have no apologies apart from Councillor Dennis Mail, who is coming in a wee bit late. However, we've got 38 present in the hall, 4 members present on Teams, and therefore we've got 42 members in total.
I can advise members that all 43 elected members have signed their declaration of acceptance of office. Can we now move to item 3 on the agenda, the appointment of a leader or convener and deputy leader civic head of the council, a report by the interim chief executive. The Local Government Scotland Act 1994 states that each local authority shall elect a convener among the councillors and may elect a deputy convener. This council in 2012 adopted the position whereby the leader was the convener and the civic head was designated as the deputy leader of the council. Previous to this, the council had a different approach. A convener, who was a civic head, and a separate leader were appointed. This council must therefore decide its preferred approach to the statutory roles, and thereafter the council's standing orders must reflect that adopted approach. If required in accordance with standing orders, appointment to these positions will be undertaken by a vote by roll call. As per the recommendation in the report at 2.2, Council has been asked to appoint the convener of the council and agree the designation to be attached to this role being either the civic head or the council leader. If there is agreement on the designation of this post, then we will move straight to nominations to the post. If there is no agreement, we will have a vote on the designation first, and then we would move to the nominations to the post. Can I therefore open up the discussion and ask Council to decide what designation is to be attached to the post? And can I also ask for nominations for the post of convener of the council? Okay, Councillor Hagman.
Thank you. Just before I move, there is a note in the chat about confirming remote participation. Do we want to clarify that before I bring forward what I'd like to move?
Yes, we've confirmed that. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. So I would like to move that the designation be attached to the convener role is the civic head designation, first of all. And then if we want to move to the second point, I would like to appoint a councillor. But I don't know if you want to do that first part first.
If you could please give us your full position.
So, and I also move to appoint Councillor Stephen Thompson as the convener of the council. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Mcgregor.
Thank you, Lorna. Yes, I'm very happy to move.
Can you use your microphone, please? Thank you.
That's it. Sorry. Very happy to move the appointment of convener of the council and agree designation as civic head. I think we're probably in absolute agreement on that, and I would nominate Malcolm Johnson as convener.
I would have pleasure in seconding Stephen Thompson. Yeah, thank you. Chair, I have the pleasure in seconding Councillor Malcolm Johnson.
Is there any other contributions? We'll deal with the first matter first. So if there's agreement then, members agreed to designate the post of convener of the council as the civic head. Yeah, agreed. Okay. So we have a motion and a counter to that in terms of the standing orders, and therefore I will then move to take a vote by roll call.
Yep, can I just check who was the seconder for Councillor Hagman's? Okay, so in terms of the motion from Councillor Hagman is to appoint Councillor Thompson as the convener civic head. The amendment to that from Councillor Mcgregor and thereafter seconded by Councillor Hislop is to appoint Malcolm Johnson. Is that correct? Okay, and as you'll note, everyone's clear what the motion is from Councillor Hagman, and thereafter the amendment from Councillor Mcgregor. We'll proceed as recent tradition to use the spreadsheet, and I'll just call out the names, and if you could just say whether you're voting for the motion or the amendment, please. I'll just go through one at a time, and we'll take our time through this first one. Councillor Bell?
Amendment.
Councillor Beretti?
Motion.
Councillor Blake?
Amendment.
Councillor Brodie?
Motion.
Councillor Dougie Campbell?
Motion.
There's a wee delay. Councillor John Campbell?
Motion.
Councillor Ian Carruthers?
Amendment.
Councillor Karen Carruthers?
Amendment.
Councillor Dashpert?
Motion.
Councillor Davis?
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster?
Motion.
Councillor Denearly?
Amendment.
Councillor Dorward?
Motion.
Councillor Drybrough?
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale?
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson?
Motion.
Councillor Giusti?
Amendment.
Councillor Hagman?
Motion, please.
Councillor Hill?
Amendment.
Councillor Howie?
Motion.
Councillor Hislop?
Amendment.
Councillor Inglis?
Amendment.
Councillor Jameson?
Motion.
Councillor Johnson?
Amendment.
Sorry, that was Malcolm Johnson. Apologies. Councillor Maureen Johnson?
Amendment.
Councillor Jordan?
Motion.
Councillor Little?
Motion.
Councillor Lowe?
Motion.
Councillor Mcgregor?
Amendment.
Councillor McCammon?
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane?
Motion.
Can I just check whether Councillor Mail's online or otherwise? No. Okay, Councillor Marshall?
Motion.
Councillor Scobie?
Motion.
Councillor Slater? Councillor Stevenson?
Motion.
Okay, Councillor Stitt?
Motion.
Councillor Thompson?
Motion.
Councillor Walters,
Motion.
Councillor Whitelaw,
Motion.
Councillor Wilson,
Motion.
Councillor Wood,
Amendment.
and Councillor Young.
Motion.
Okay. As members will see, the motion was carried 25 to 17.
I can therefore announce that Councillor Stephen Thompson has been elected Convener of the Council, and Councillor Thompson, can I ask you to take your seat and preside over the remaining part of the meeting? Thank you.
Thank you very much, members, and thank you, Lorna, for presiding over the early part of the meeting. I should probably say congratulations to everybody for getting elected. I don't know if I've spoken to you all personally since the election, but we're all here to do a job for Dumfries and Galloway Council, and I look forward to working with all of you in the next session as we go forward. I should probably say as well, just thanks to the senior management team and also to the wider council family of staff who've been keeping the wheels running and delivering services while we sort ourselves out, as it were. But yeah, so I'll move on with the next item of business, I think. So that'll be nominations for the post of leader. So I've got
Councillor Driver first, and then Councillor Johnston.
Councillor Driver first, followed by Councillor Johnston.
Thanks very much, Convener and the leader, and congratulations on getting the role. Let me be first to say that. I've had a look at the papers and the opportunities here, and I think we should have a co-leader within the council. So I move to appoint yourself and Councillor Dorwood as co-leaders of the council, and also move to appoint Councillor Dorwood as the deputy convener, as is.
Thanks, Councillor Driver. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, and congratulations on your appointment, Stephen. I would like to propose Councillor Gail Mcgregor as leader. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have seconders for either of those proposals?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
And I'm happy to second Linda Dorwood.
Okay, so we've got two seconders. I'm just wondering, in terms of which one came first, does that affect which is the motion or the amendment? So I think we've got seconders for both proposals there. Are there any other nominations? Okay, I don't see any around the room. I guess in that case we'll have to go to the vote. Do you want to just clarify, lad, please?
Yeah, I'll just confirm, first and foremost, again, the motion is to appoint a co-leader role with Councillor Dorwood and Councillor Thompson as co-leaders, and Councillor Dorwood as deputy convener. And that was moved by Councillor Driver and seconded, if I got that right, by Councillor Brodie. Then we've got an amendment to that from Councillor Johnston. to appoint Councillor Gail Mcgregor as the leader of the council, and that was seconded by Councillor English, I think. Was that correct? Okay, so if everybody's clear what the motion and the amendment is, then we'll proceed to the roll call. Okay, and we'll start with the convener, Councillor Thompson.
Motion.
Councillor Bell.
Amendment.
Councillor Beretti.
Motion.
Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Brodie.
Motion.
Councillor Campbell.
Motion.
Baby Campbell, sorry. Motion. Councillor John Campbell.
Motion.
Councillor Ian Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Karen Carruthers.
Amendment.
Councillor Dashbar.
Motion.
Councillor Davis.
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster.
Motion.
Councillor Dorward.
Motion.
Councillor Denerley.
Amendment.
So I'm just waiting for it to catch up on it. Okay. Councillor Drybar.
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale.
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson.
Motion.
Councillor Giusti.
Amendment.
Councillor Hagman.
Motion, please.
Councillor Hill.
Amendment.
Councillor Howie.
Motion.
Councillor Hislop.
Amendment.
Councillor English.
Amendment.
Councillor Jameson.
Motion.
Councillor Malcolm Johnson.
Amendment.
Councillor Maureen Johnson.
Amendment.
Councillor Jordan.
Motion.
Councillor Little.
Motion.
Councillor Lowe.
Motion.
Councillor Mcgregor.
Amendment.
Councillor McCammon.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor Mail. I think still not present. Councillor Marshall.
Motion.
Councillor Scobie.
Motion.
Councillor Slater. Councillor Stevenson.
Motion.
Councillor Stitt.
Motion.
Councillor Walters.
Motion.
Councillor Whitelaw.
Motion.
Councillor Wilson.
Motion.
Councillor Wood.
Amendment.
And Councillor Young.
Motion.
Okay, and as members will see, the motion was carried 24 to 17.
Thank you, members. I think the outcome is clear. Could I invite Councillor Dorward to come up and take her seat at the table here? And congratulations.
Chair.
Councillor Hislop.
Apologies. I got late back from a curling competition earlier this morning. 24-17. Did I miss an apology earlier? Because there should be 42 plus Councillor Mail who was turning up late, whilst there's 24 and 17's 41 plus Councillor Mayor's 42. I may be wrong.
Yeah, apologies, the spreadsheet takes a wee while to come through, so I was reading it as it was. It's 2570, you're quite correct, Councillor Hislop.
Thanks for keeping an eye on that, Councillor Hislop. Okay. Okay, so thanks, members. So that takes us on to, I think, 2.4 in the recommendations in your papers, which is effectively the civic head receiving 75% of the remuneration paid to the civic council leader. So in the report, it refers to the regulations under which remuneration of councillors is determined and confirms the salary levels for convener of Dumfries and Galloway Council, which is fixed nationally at 39,148. Within the regulations, each local authority may have one civic head post and will have scope to determine the level of salary paid to that civic head up to a maximum of 75% of the remuneration paid to the council convener. That means the maximum salary that can be paid to the civic head of Dumfries and Galloway Council is 29,361. Is this agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Um, 2.5 then is that to note that standing orders may need to be amended to accommodate the decisions taken already, which obviously will reflect co-leadership. And Councillor Mcgregor, you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you. Congratulations, convener and leader. I'm happy to agree that they are amended to accommodate decisions, but I feel that within the discussions that we had and the hope that I had to form a minority administration that was as collaborative and inclusive as possible until the door was shut on us, that I would really like to further agree to the formation of a leadership sounding board. And the function of the Leadership Sounding Board is to act as a non-decision-making forum for identifying and discussing priority issues for our Council and to develop and strengthen working relationships. The Council agrees to the establishment of a Leadership Sounding Board. The membership will be the Council leader and convener and political group leaders or their substitutes. And the Service Committee chairpersons or spokespersons will be invited where board business relates to their brief. And I understand that this sits within a change to standing orders, so I can either table this just now or at the next item, but I would like to move that if that's at all possible.
Thank you, Gail. If it's of any help, I was about to go on to make an additional recommendation, and I'll run it by you if that's okay, just to see. And that was effectively very much along the same lines, which was to agree and invite members to agree that a paper will be brought back to the next full council, which will outline the creation of a leaders' panel of leaders of all groups, a budget panel involving finance leads from all groups, a business bureau involving business managers from all groups, noting that those groups would not have decision-making powers in the way committees have, but provide a forum for all groups to discuss key issues ahead of papers being brought to full council and the committees for decisions. And similarly, or included in that, is that all 43 elected members have the opportunity to contribute to the development of a new 5-year council plan based on our shared values. So I don't know if you'd be happy with that, or if you want to move your original.
In the spirit of conviviality, could we maybe just call a recess and circulate it, and we'll just have 5-10 minutes to have a look at it? And I'll send my wording to Tracy. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's probably a good idea, and I've just had a voice in my ear saying that there are some copies of the words I've just read out that can be shared as well. So maybe we'll take a short recess to consider, to allow that to happen and be shared amongst all members, and then come back. I'll just take advice from an expert here in terms of how long that recess should be, but 10 minutes okay for everybody? Okay, thank you. Welcome back, members. Thanks for your forbearance. Having looked at, hopefully everyone's had a chance to look through both documents. I don't think there's very much between them. I think unless somebody is very strongly minded, but I think the intent of the recommendation that we put forward was effectively to bring back a paper that would look at how we go about forming the respective leadership panels, sounding boards, whatever the language ends up being, but I think that's what the paper needs to bring back, obviously in the spirit of collaborative work and as outlined in both the motion and effectively the amendment if it went to that. So I would suggest that if we're consensually minded, we could go forward on that basis and have that brought back. Gail, I don't know if you want to speak to the suggestion you made.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. I'm really pleased in the spirit of inclusion that the administration have grasped this idea, which I suggested about 2 weeks ago in negotiations. I think it will be a very positive way of going forward and a good way of developing policy within our inclusive council. The one thing that I maybe would slightly change is that we maybe just agree to the creation of all the panels in Bureau today. So, you know, that principle is absolutely agreed, and then we'll receive a report to the next full council to look at the structures of the two panels in the Bureau, and could that be in consultation with all group leaders?
So I think there's a finer point there about what we agree to today in terms of bringing a report back, because I think, to be fair to all members, it would probably be better to see the detail of that in a report before we create something. Because I think if we agree it today, that's effectively instantiating the creation of those panels, and we don't yet know the detail of how they might work. Obviously, the spirit would be collaborative and we'd want to include everybody, but I think we need to really... We want to get there, but I think we want to do it in a way that's transparent and obviously includes as much as possible.
I'll maybe look to Vlad for his governance on that. I think the key point is that all group leaders should be involved in discussions before next full council around what the structures would look like for those panels.
Yeah, I mean, I'll ask Vlad just to sort of clarify in case I've said anything out of turn, but I think, yeah, obviously as we devise the input to the report that's going to come back, I think it would probably be appropriate to make sure all leaders were included. Yeah. Okay. Vlad?
I think with that clarification of accepting of that position, from a governance perspective, it would be better to bring back a paper that has the full terms of reference and exactly what bodies are being proposed, which would allow for that conversation to happen between now and then, so that when Council takes a decision, it takes a final decision on how to proceed on that.
I think I've got Councillor Brodie to come in.
Yeah, I'm happy to produce to support the leader's proposal. It's important that we be fully inclusive in the council, and we bring back that report, and we'll reach an agreement at our next full council meeting.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Brodie. Councillor Hislop.
Chair, I think that's a good way forward if we actually include all the leaders in there, because each will have their own nuance of how they want to see it work, and hopefully they can bring back a, you know, is it a camel created by a committee? And I think there's also the opportunity to actually look at other councils. I think other councils have similar arrangements. Maybe we could get some feedback from other council officers from across the country to see what they do, what are good ideas, what are bad ideas, and how we can take this forward. Because I think it's going to be a hard 5 years if we're going to have budget savings or cuts or whatever we want to call them, and I think we're going to need to actually look at how we as a council can make sure that we deliver for the area.
No, thank you for that, and I think on this one Derek's indicated that he would want to come in, just maybe speak to that a little bit. Derek?
Thank you, Convener. Morning, members. And just to confirm, we've certainly been doing a lot of work, as you know, in the last council and as part of your induction in terms of that shared endeavour. And just to reassure all members that we'd be more than happy to service those informal discussions amongst group leaders to ensure that we bring a paper to the next meeting of full council, very much encapsulating the culture that you've set this morning. Thank you very much.
So just in terms of where I think we are, I think what we're saying is we will bring a report back, but the leaders of all groups will be involved in inputting into that report, and we will look at other examples of good practice to make sure we get the best option in the form of a report that we can then consider at the next full council. Is that a reasonable way forward? Okay, thank you. I've got two very able people giving me bits of paper from both sides at the moment, so just bear with me. But I do have I think probably a very apposite statement regarding curling in the region. So I'm delighted our council recently had the opportunity to recognise the achievements of our curling Olympians at the 50th anniversary of Stranraer Ice Rink. Curling continues to give our region a profile, and last weekend in Sweden, Scotland won the World Junior Men's Curling Championship. Team Craik had local representation with Niall Ryder from Stranraer, along with Scott Hislop and Jack Carrick from Dumfries. I'm sure... So I'm sure you'll all agree this is a great achievement, and I'll write to congratulate the curlers on their success. Okay, thank you. Okay, so on to item 4, which is declarations of interest. Do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make? Councillor Mcgregor.
Just to declare an interest in item 11, obviously I continue as spokesperson for Councillor, and I'm aware that there's appointments to membership of Councillor in that part.
Thank you. Any other members? I don't see any hands up, so we'll go on to item 5, which is the adoption of standing orders. This report sets out the Council's standing orders and recommends that they be adopted. Depending on the decisions obviously taken at item 3, I think we've noted that administrative amendments to reflect the changes agreed will be required to the standing orders. That will be done following the meeting and appended to the minute for transparency. Vlad's here to assist members with any questions. Is there anything you want to add to that, Vlad?
Yeah, just to clarify, thank you, that the convener role and deputy convener role will now be administratively amended into the standing orders. Obviously, we had a different infrastructure before in which the leader was also the convener of the council. So that will be amended to reflect that convener role now and that deputy convener role within standing orders.
Councillor Mcgregor.
Yeah, sorry, you're going to get sick of hearing me. Yeah, again, I think in the spirit of inclusion and collaboration, but also localism. As you know, I'm hugely supportive of people making decisions very, very locally and as local to their communities as possible. And I think to that end, I would like to move that standing orders be amended to accommodate that the Council agrees to delegate the appointment of the 4 area chairs to the first meeting of their area committees, but only where the committee reaches a majority decision on the appointment. If a majority decision cannot be reached, the committee do not have delegated authority to make an appointment, and the matter will be referred back to full council. And then a further recommendation that we further agree to delegate the appointment of the 4 area committee vice chairs to area committees. And then I think it takes the politics out of what should be very good local committees. So I would so move.
Thanks, Gail. I think we probably need to see details of that, but I would. It is a competent motion to put. However, I would move that we adopt the standing orders as they are for now. And if we do need to, and this is maybe something that we can maybe have input into as all group leaders in the next period up to the next full council, but if we do want to do that, I think that should be something that comes back to the next full council. But for today, I think we should go forward as recommended. And I would so move if need be. Councillor Johnson.
Yes, I would like to second Councillor Mcgregor's suggestion.
Councillor Dorward.
I would second Councillor Thompson's suggestion.
So just to clarify then, we have a motion and amendment. Again, I don't know if you want to circulate that, if we want to take... So do we want to take another recess then to get a copy of that, or are members happy to get that?
Can we use microphones, please?
Yeah, it's simply to delegate or to amend standing orders to accommodate the council being able to delegate the appointment of area chairs to area committees, and the same would apply to vice chairs. But they would need to be at the first meeting of the committee, and the committee would need to reach a majority decision on the appointment. And if that cannot be reached, then it would revert back to full council.
Vlad, if you'd like to come in maybe to assist, because I appreciate members may understand that and be comfortable with that, but we don't have it in front of us other than verbally. I'm assured that it's competent, but just for the benefit of all the members in the room, if we feel we need a recess to consider that in its fullest, then I'm happy to do so. I'm in your hands, members. Do you want to stop for 10 minutes and have another look at that form of words? No. I'm hearing murmurs saying they're pretty much happy to go ahead. I'll let Vlad come in just for a wee bit of support.
Obviously, up to yourself, Convener, in terms of that particular recess. In terms of what's been proposed is obviously an amendment to standing orders, and it sounds a bit more detailed in terms of obviously the process to be had, but if all members are clear with that process to be had within that, then I think we can proceed to the motion and amendment thereafter.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, can I just get clarity on your amendment there? And are you saying that you'll take this to the leaders to discuss, then bring back? Is that your amendment?
My amendment is to go with the recommendations as they are in the report. What I'm suggesting is that in order to find a way forward for today, which obviously is up to members, is to have that conversation when we bring back the details of what we've already agreed in terms of the leadership panel, etc. And it might be an appropriate time to have those discussions in the run-up to the next full council. But for today, my amendment is to go with the recommendations as they are. Councillor Hislop.
Chair, does that mean to say that when we come to the appropriate point in the agenda, we wouldn't be appointing area chairs under your proposal because you're bringing it back?
No, I'm saying we go with it as they are, so we get through the business for today, but that doesn't, full council is effectively sovereign, so we can have that discussion, and at the next full council we may decide to amend what we've done. Councillor Dempster.
I thought any decision we made couldn't be brought back within 6 months, Leader, so that would be a decision we'd make for some considerable time. Not that I'm objecting to it, I support your proposal, but that would be the consequence, I think.
Vlad, can you put me right?
Yeah, it's good academic questions we're getting in here in terms of standing orders. Absolutely, in terms of a decision from the council, there's that kind of 6-month rule. However, if circumstances change and that needs to be brought back, then it can be brought back. First and foremost, later on, the report is more about appointing to those posts. Thereafter, if standing orders are required to be changed because there's to be a new way forward, then that can be done with full council approval. And again, you can suspend standing orders in regards to that particular 6-month rule anyways. So there is a mechanism for amending, particularly where circumstances have changed.
Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, Chair. I fully appreciate this is a new council and probably do need to have a review of standing orders. But we have just recently done a review of standing orders. So it might be appropriate that, not only this, but other points could be taken and it could be discussed amongst the leaders and then bring forward a suite of maybe amendments or possible amendments to standing orders. That gives us time to look at it all again freshly because we've got a lot of new councillors in the room.
No, it's a point well made. So we do have structures in place that allow us to review our standing orders. Obviously today we can make the decision one way or the other. But unless there's any other speakers, I suggest we just go to the... Sorry, do we have another speaker in the chat? Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Carruthers, I see your name in the chat, and forgive me, I think I maybe took Councillor Marshall first.
No, that's fine, Convener. Thanks very much for giving me the chance. You say it's under 6-month rule. I think that does not apply to full council, only service committees, core committees, subcommittees, area committees, and so on.
Okay, thank you. But for the purposes of today then, we've got a motion and an amendment. The motion being the form of words that everybody seems to be happy to acknowledge, and the amendment being that we go with the recommendations as they are in the report. Vlad, do you want to add anything to that?
I can, for those that are online, they should be able to see it in the chat as well, conscious that those present in the room can't see the wording. However, I think we're ready to proceed to the vote, unless there's any other questions on that. Okay, if you just bear with us, we'll bring up the voting sheet, and just to confirm, the motion is as proposed by Councillor Mcgregor and seconded by Councillor Johnston. Thereafter, the amendment is by Councillor Thompson, and then Councillor Dorward seconding that one. If you just bear with us, we'll get the voting structure ready. Okay. Councillor Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Dorward.
Amendment.
Councillor Bell.
Motion.
Councillor Beretti.
Amendment.
Councillor Blake.
Motion.
Councillor Brodie.
Amendment.
Councillor Doogie Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor John Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Carruthers.
Motion.
Councillor Karen Carruthers.
Motion.
Councillor Dashbert.
Amendment.
Councillor Davis.
Motion.
Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Dennerley.
Motion.
Councillor Drybrough.
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Giusti.
Motion.
Councillor Hagman.
Amendment.
Councillor Howe.
Motion.
Motion. Councillor Howie.
Amendment.
Councillor Hislop.
Motion.
Councillor English.
Motion.
Councillor Jameson.
Amendment.
Councillor Malcolm Johnson.
Motion.
Councillor Maureen Johnston.
Motion.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Motion.
Councillor Jordan.
Amendment.
Councillor Little.
Amendment.
Councillor Lowe.
Amendment.
Councillor Mcgregor.
Motion.
Councillor McCammon.
Motion.
Councillor McFarlane.
Amendment.
Councillor Mail.
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall.
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie.
Abstain.
Councillor Slater. Motion? Yeah. Motion for Councillor Slater. Councillor Stevenson.
Amendment.
Councillor Stitt.
Amendment.
Councillor Walters.
Amendment.
Councillor Whitelaw.
Amendment.
Councillor Wilson.
Amendment.
Councillor Wood.
Motion.
Councillor Young.
Amendment.
Okay, and we've got 25 for the amendment and 17 for the motion. So the amendment is carried. Okay, so that's the standing orders adopted.
Thank you, members. That's the standing orders adopted. We now move on to item 6, which is the scheme of administration and delegation to committees. The report sets out the Council's scheme of administration and delegation to committees, which in lay terms sets out the powers of committees, their remit and composition. Recommendation in the report proposes their adoption by following full council at its meeting of 31st of March 2022, for those who were there, agreeing the current scheme of administration and delegation to committees. This followed a review overseen by the Review of Standing Orders Subcommittee, which included a programme of member workshops, feedback from all 4 area committees, review by legal services, each directorate committee governance, internal audit and benchmarking with other councils in Scotland. And depending on the decisions made at item 3, revisions may be required to the scheme of administration and delegation to committees, which will be done following the meeting and appended to the minute for transparency. Vlad's here to assist members with any questions. Any questions from members? Councillor Mcgregor.
Apologies, thank you, Convener. Yeah, I'm quite happy to adopt the scheme as read, and I maybe look to Vlad for some advice on this, but I would maybe like to add a recommendation that in accordance with 4.14 of the scheme of administration and delegation member officer working groups, the council emergency working groups, that the council resolves to form as a matter of urgency 2 short-term working groups of no more than 4 members each that will work with the administration and officers and focus on reducing backlogs, pressures caused in part by the public health crisis. The working groups will work over the summer period and make recommendations to the appropriate committee. The first working group would be a cost of living pressures working group, which will bring together all sections of the council involved in identifying and supporting individuals, families, households and businesses who are under pressure, and to optimise uptake of national and locally administered schemes and mobilise organised local communities to work cohesively with the council and other support networks. And a second working group which would focus on roads and infrastructure and aiming to identify the backlogs in service delivery due to the pandemic and underinvestment, particularly in relation to roads, pavements, gullies and verge maintenance. And I would so move.
Councillor Johnson.
Second that motion.
And again, I'm happy to send it to Tracy because it's quite lengthy, that one.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to be fair, my view was just going to be basically to adopt the scheme of administration as they are, because I think we need to allow our officers and staff to get on with the business that they have until, again, we sort of have details coming back to the next council about how we take business forward collaboratively. But I think for that, the nature of that motion, I think it would only be fair to let members actually see that properly and take some time to consider it. So,
sorry, absolutely. I'm not suggesting that we change the schemes of administration. It sits within our scheme, my proposal. So I did say that I'm happy to adopt the schemes as read, but would propose at this stage the formation of some working groups as we are able to do at 4.14.
yeah, so Vlad,
which I would hope we'd get agreement on.
Vlad, do you want to come in and assist?
Yeah, I see Councillor Marshall's also want to come in, but just to clarify, first and foremost, is there agreement to adopting of the scheme is the first question. The second question is in regards to setting up a working group, and those working groups that are being proposed are already laid out in that particular scheme as to how that would work. So the first most important one is there agreement from full council in terms of adopting the scheme as it stands, and thereafter the question for members to consider is the second part of that in terms of setting up the relevant working groups that have been mentioned.
Councillor Marshall, I'll let you come in and then we'll go back to that. Thank you.
Yeah, just with regards to fully respect the proposal that's been put forward, but we are in the process. We will be going in a process where it will involve all groups looking at the council plan, and we do have both those issues within the council plan. And I think it's better, rather than to try and make a decision today, there might be a better way of actually doing that if we're all working together collaboratively and discussing that. So I think it's a bit early. There's a need for that, but I think if we all work together and actually we can bring something that's a bit more thought out.
Okay, thank you. Well, firstly, I mean, thanks to Vlad for sort of separating out the two bits of business there. But firstly, are all members happy to agree the scheme of delegation, this administration delegation to committees as detailed in the first instance? Agreed, thank you. Okay, and then if we move on to the second part for what Councillor Mcgregor is proposing, as I say, rather than rule anything out just now, but I think it is reasonable to take the time to consider this in more detail. So can I suggest we have another recess where we look at that, if that can be circulated for all members. I don't know if that's by email or through photocopies, but
10 to 12.
Yeah, shall I say we'll come back rather than 10 minutes roughly? I'll say 10 to 12 if we can come back here then, if that's okay. Thanks, members. Welcome back, members. Hope everybody's had a chance to read the proposal. So we have a motion on the table. I'm still not minded to take this on board as is. We've agreed the scheme of administration and delegation, and it does have that section which allows us to create things, but in line with, or to be consistent with what we agreed at item 3, where we said, yes, here are the things that are important and we want to work together, but to bring a report back, I'm still of that mind. So I'd be interested to hear from other members. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, I did say before we'd done the recess that I did put forward, and I've just cobbled together a form of words to address the issue. I think both the cost of living pressure and the roads and infrastructure backlog are very urgent, and not surprisingly, they were involved in, both issues were involved in all the creation of the manifestos, including the Conservatives. But we have stated that from today or tomorrow, we will be developing a council plan which will include these and all other issues that have been raised within the manifestos. And I would propose that we look at this fully as we're developing the council plan. I think we need to address both those issues with a degree of urgency, and therefore I would propose that we wait and discuss as part of the council plan and agree a speedy way to resolve both issues.
Thank you. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I would second the amendment put forward by Councillor Marshall. I think in the spirit of collaboration and what we've already agreed in terms of the creation of the various boards and bringing anything back to full council, but I would second the amendment from Councillor Marshall. Thank you.
Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Convener. Given that there does seem to be a general agreement that this is something that's going to be forming part of the council plan and taken forward, these issues are urgent, as Councillor Marshall mentioned as well. And I just find the fact that if we're going to adopt it anyway, why don't we just do it now rather than wait? And that's why I think we should push this forward today.
Yes, Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, because my reason for that is that the working groups that you've suggested may not be the most appropriate way forward. Let's look at it and make sure that we get the best process going forward to address these urgently.
Thank you. And Councillor Brodie.
Yeah, I support Councillor Marshall's proposal, but also recognise the urgency which Councillor Johnson has indicated. So, although we won't have a formal working group set up right away, I think we could start working very closely together on these issues and start to form up some cooperative agreement across that. So, I agree with Councillor Marshall, but the talking should start and discussion should start now.
Thank you. Councillor Mcgregor first, then Councillor Scobie.
Thank you, Convener. I think we're losing the matter of urgency on both of these items. I'm very aware that over the next few weeks, councils will be busy, committees will be busy, but I think the creation of 2 working groups that can start some work pre-recess and over the summer period to bring back some really, really urgent recommendations to committees shouldn't be kicked to the next full council or the one after that, or as and when the council plan is agreed, or as and when that we are going to have serious issues to deal with over the coming months as we go into autumn. So my motion stands. I think we need working groups that involve the skills and the skill sets that we have across the council to look at these 2 issues as a matter of urgency, and it sits within our scheme of administration and delegation to create these. We won't be meeting for another month, so I would suggest that we do create them today, and as I say, I move to do so.
Thank you. Councillor Scobie first, then Councillor Hagman.
Yeah, Chair, I think the motion identifies 2 issues or 2 areas. There are other areas of equal importance and long outstanding, some of the local issues that need that same attention, as indeed the roads and the well-being following the pandemic. So from what Sean was saying, I think we've got to take the time to look at that, to build into the plan, but put a degree of urgency to it, so that we are not just looking at those two issues, but the other outstanding issues that many of the people have been facing in the localities. So I think we need to build that into the local plan, but, you know, take that time, but do it as urgently as possible and bring back how we're going to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Hagman.
Thank you, Convener. My points have been well made. Thank you.
I don't see any other speakers, but we have a motion and an amendment on the table. So, Vlad, unless there's any clarification you need to give, can we proceed to the vote?
Okay.
Is there a need to divide given what has been said?
Thanks, Councillor Scobie. I think, Councillor Mcgregor, you did indicate you were keen to keep your motion as is. So, if we can take that forward.
Yep, and just to clarify whilst we set up, we've got a motion by Councillor Mcgregor, seconded by Councillor Johnston, as tabled within what's been provided to members, which includes setting up of 2 working groups, short-term working groups on 2 particular areas. The amendment to that is Councillor Marshall, which was seconded by Councillor Hagman, which in essence is that those working groups are not set up and that instead there's a discussion to be had in regards to the overall council plan and ensuring that that council plan incorporates these. Is that a fair summary?
Justice did say the 2 issues as a matter of urgency.
Okay, to include those 2 issues as a matter of urgency in that amendment. So I think we are now ready for the roll call. Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Dorward.
Amendment.
Councillor Bell.
Motion.
Councillor Beretti.
Amendment.
Councillor Blake.
Motion.
Councillor Brodie.
Amendment.
Councillor Doogie Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor John Campbell.
Amendment.
Councillor Ian Carruthers.
Motion.
Councillor Karen Carruthers.
Motion.
Councillor Dashper.
Amendment.
Councillor Davis.
Motion.
Councillor Dempster.
Amendment.
Councillor Denerley.
Motion.
Councillor Drybert.
Amendment.
Councillor Drysdale.
Motion.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Giusti.
Motion.
Councillor Hagman.
Amendment.
Councillor Howe.
Motion.
Motion. Councillor Howie.
Amendment.
There seems to be a bit of interference. I'm just checking. It's okay. Okay. Councillor Hislop.
Motion.
Councillor English.
Motion.
Councillor Jameson.
Amendment.
Councillor Malcolm Johnson.
Motion.
Councillor Maureen Johnston.
Motion.
Councillor Jordan.
Amendment.
Councillor Little.
Amendment.
Oh.
Amendment.
Councillor Mcgregor.
Motion.
Councillor McCammon.
Motion.
Councillor McFarlane.
Amendment.
Councillor Mayo. Councillor Mayo, I think is online. Councillor Mayo, if you could try and unmute.
Trying. Motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Marshall.
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie.
Happy to support the amendment if it includes the Georgia Tell into that as well.
Councillor Slater.
Motion.
Councillor Stevenson.
Amendment.
Councillor Stitt.
Amendment.
Councillor Walters.
Amendment.
Councillor Whitelaw.
Amendment.
Councillor Wilson.
Amendment.
Councillor Wood.
Motion.
Councillor Young.
Amendment.
Okay. As members will see, the amendment was carried 25 to 18.
Thank you, members. So that's been decided, but I think we all appreciate that there is an urgency to many things across the wider council plan we need to consider, and we'll bring that back as appropriate, and we'll start the conversations after this meeting in terms of the different leaders, so I think that's appropriate. If we then go on to item 7, that's the scheme of delegation and responsibilities to officers and statutory appointments. This report details the scheme of delegation and responsibilities to officers and statutory appointments. The scheme contains details of those functions, both statutory and non-statutory, which the Council has chosen to delegate to officers. The Council is also required by law to appoint certain officers, and these are known as statutory appointments or officers. These include a head of paid service, a monitoring officer, a chief financial or section 95 officer, and a chief social worker. Further acts require the Council to appoint officers for a variety of particular purposes, and these officers are generally referred to as the proper officer for particular functions. For example, to the head of governance and assurance is the proper officer for the receipt of councillors' interests and the maintenance of records. In simple terms, the scheme sets out the duties of officers and the legislation which governs these matters. Depending on the decisions made at item 3, which have already been made, revisions may be required to the scheme of delegation and responsibilities to officers and statutory appointments, which will be done following the meeting and appended to the minute for transparency. Again, Vlad is able to assist members with any questions. Is there anything you want to add at the moment? Okay. Over to you, members. Any questions on this particular report? Councillor Dryborough.
No questions as such, just to agree the recommendations as is.
Thank you. Anyone otherwise minded? We have consensus. So thanks, members. That's agreed. That takes us on to item 8, which is committee size, proportionality and appointment to chairs, vice chairs and senior councillor positions. This report provides members with information to enable the council to consider and agree the size of committees, agree proportionality across committees and subcommittees, and appoint chairs and vice chairs of various committees or subcommittees, and determine which positions will attract senior councillor salaries. Vlad's here again to assist members with any questions on the report. I don't know if you want to add anything at this point, Vlad? No.
No, nothing from my end apart from just to look at the recommendations and in terms of process, just proceeding to 2.1, 2.2 before moving on to 2.3 and 2.4 would be my suggestion.
Thank you. So firstly then, if we look at 2.1, which is, and 2.2, to consider and agree the size of committees and to agree proportionality across the committees and subcommittees, which was circulated to members, you should have that as one of the appendices to the report. Are we happy to agree to the size of committees? Okay, thank you. And do we want to agree proportionality across committees and subcommittees based on the report? Okay, thank you. So that takes us to 2.3. Now, I think blank slates were detail and roads were given to all council groups so that they could populate those as required, just to ease the sort of process of this, because we could go through it line by line, but I don't know if anybody's really got the appetite for that. Councillor Hagman, your hand's up.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, on recommendation 2.3, I would like to move that the SNP, Labour and Independent Group slate detailing the appointments of chairs and vice chairs and remunerated positions be agreed, and there has already been submitted a copy to Vlad for circulation of that combined slate.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie first and then Mcgregor.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Councillor Mcgregor.
Yeah, happy. Convener, thanks very much. Happy to have a look at the slate. We obviously do have an alternative slate, but I think it might be beneficial if your slate were circulated to us and we recessed to have a look at that before any determination could be made, if that's okay.
I'm in members' hands, but that sounds reasonable. So if we can make sure that particular slate is circulated to all members for consideration, and come back at 12:30. Okay, thank you. Okay, members, welcome back. Thanks again, and you should also have a copy of an alternative slate as well. No? I think there was one circulated. I'm not sure if all members have seen that yet. But
it's being posted up in the chat as well, Convener.
so are members content that they have both copies of the proposed slates? Obviously, there's one being put forward as a motion, which has been seconded. I don't know if somebody wants to... Gail?
Thank you, Chair. It's quite disappointing, really, that our region, it's obviously one of the most diverse, innovative and ambitious in Scotland, and I think it deserved a local authority to match that. Unfortunately, today, the largest group on the council, a vibrant, talented, visionary group of 16, have yet again been shut out of the main running of the council, which is incredibly unfortunate and doesn't reflect the 38% of the vote that we succeeded in getting on May the 5th. I suppose, given the result that's been handed to us by local voters, I believe that my role brought with it a responsibility to help ensure a stable administration. I've not been successful in that, but had I been successful, I think my slate would have looked very different from the current administration's slate. And certainly in respect of including local decision making on who chairs and vice chairs area committees, and my desire to delegate that earlier on, and my openness and willingness to look at opposition members sitting on quasi-judicial committees such as planning and employment and appeals would probably have been my desired slate going forward had I been successful in forming an administration. So, you know, we've been denied that today. Our region's been let down, and I think we're going to have a very bumpy ride or road ahead of us, literally in some cases. But with that, I would propose the Conservative slate as an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Yes, happy to second that.
Any other propositions? Well, we've got a motion and an amendment on the table. I suggest, if it's clear in everybody's minds what they're looking at, that we go to the vote.
Okay, thank you, members. If I could just to summarise, we've got Councillor Hagman proposing the first slate, seconded by Councillor Brodie, and then we've got Councillor Mcgregor proposing the second slate, and that's been seconded by Councillor Johnston. So that would be the amendment. Is everyone happy and content in terms of the voting for motion and amendment? Okay, if everyone's happy, we'll proceed to the vote. Councillor Thompson?
Motion.
Councillor Dorward?
Motion.
Councillor Bell?
Amendment.
Councillor Beretti?
Motion.
Councillor Blake?
Amendment.
Councillor Brodie?
Motion.
Councillor Dougie Campbell?
Motion.
Councillor John Campbell?
Motion.
Councillor Ian Carruthers?
Amendment.
Councillor Karen Carruthers?
Amendment.
Councillor Dashpart?
Motion.
Councillor Davis?
Amendment.
Councillor Dempster.
Motion.
Councillor Dennerley.
Amendment.
Amendment. Councillor Dryburgh.
Motion.
Councillor Drysdale.
Amendment.
Councillor Ferguson.
Motion.
Councillor Giusti.
Amendment.
Councillor Hagman.
Motion.
Councillor Howe.
Amendment.
Councillor Howie.
Motion.
Councillor Hislop.
Amendment.
Councillor English.
Amendment.
Councillor Jameson.
Motion.
Councillor Malcolm Johnson.
Amendment.
Councillor Maureen Johnson.
Amendment.
Councillor Jordan.
Motion.
Councillor Little.
Motion.
Councillor Lowe.
Motion.
Councillor Mcgregor.
Amendment.
Councillor McCammon.
Amendment.
Councillor McFarlane.
Motion.
Councillor Mayo.
Motion.
Councillor Marshall.
Motion.
Councillor Scobie.
Motion.
Councillor Slater.
Motion.
Councillor Stevenson.
Motion.
Councillor Stitt.
Motion.
Councillor Walters.
Motion.
Councillor Whitelaw.
Motion.
Councillor Wilson.
Motion.
Councillor Wood.
Amendment.
Councillor Young.
Motion.
Okay, that concludes the vote, and as members will see, the motion was carried 27 to 16.
Thank you, members. So effectively that sorts out the appointment of chairs and vice chairs and also to the 14 senior councillor remunerated positions. We can move on to the next. I'm just conscious that this day's been a wee bit staggered with recesses, etc. So if it would be inhumane for me to keep you here while there's sort of lunch, I don't know if you've been able to sort yourselves out, but I'm happy to take another break, or we can crack on with the next couple of items. I'll just see whose belly rumbles the loudest, I think. But crack on. Right, we'll try the calendar of meetings and see how we get on. So item 9 is the calendar of meetings. Obviously the report's in front of you. The report sets out the calendar of meetings reflecting the scheme of administration. Oh. Sorry, apologies members, I've made a schoolboy error. Vlad, if you can maybe just assist with finishing off the last item.
Yeah, in terms of the recommendations, that's all been dealt with. However, just to point out to members that following this meeting, governance colleagues will issue a further slate to group leaders seeking nominations to all committee spaces, which is required by tomorrow. I recognise the short timescale, but obviously we've got committees coming up. So the correct invites can be issued and training can be carried out in line with the programme, including the statutory training that we must take for certain quasi-judicial functions.
Thanks, Vlad. So homework for the group leaders tonight. Councillor Hislop.
Just on tidying that last item up, I take it that your slate that you had in front of us for the additional senior member will go to the member we nominated in our slate, the Conservative one, just so that you, because it just says Conservative member, and I think you need to appoint to the senior officers, and there's a asterisk, so that would be Councillor Mcgregor. Is that right? Because it wasn't on your slate, it just had Conservative.
Yep. Councillor Hislop's correct in terms of if you want to define it. Obviously the slate didn't define it, and that allowed the Conservative group to choose, and they've obviously indicated that. So over to yourself, Convener.
No, absolutely, and I think rather than be presumptuous at the time, I think we just put it forward as a Conservative, and obviously that's up to you. But absolutely, that's if that's what your wish is, then that's what it will be. Thank you. So back to the calendar of meetings. Yeah, so the calendar is there through to December 2022, and we're recommending that we can adopt that. Again, Vlad can assist with any questions, but I would hope that we could take that forward, and then we can start populating our diaries with all the meetings that we'll be looking forward to attending. Any questions from members? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Leader. It's just with regards to the placing appeals training. Now, my understanding is we only have 3 members, elected members, trained to do that, myself being one. Now, with there being a shortage, should that not be brought forward at the earliest opportunity for the back-end intake of youngsters?
I mean, I don't have the expertise to answer that, but I'm going to search around the room for somebody who might. If you can bear with me a moment, I'll take Councillor Ferguson's question.
It's just that from previous experience, we don't have the IGB meetings or the we've got some of the Swestrans meeting in, but say we've other outside bodies, which I appreciate we've not come to that yet, but they need to be in the calendar here, or can we get that updated after today? I don't want to hold up the business today, but they should be in the council diary, so we know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a fair point, because when I looked through the calendar, it did have, as you say, Swestrans and Community Planning Partnership, for example, which aren't necessarily council committees, but the IJB clearly has a key role to play, and we are hoping to appoint members to that at a later item. So is that something we can maybe pick up as a note to include the dates of IJB meetings where relevant or appropriate in the calendar as we get the details of those?
The IGB is a separate entity, if we want to call it that, and therefore this is purely the council's calendar, but I'm in your gift in terms of if you wish for that to be included, but the IGB is a separate entity, so we don't tend to include other calendars into our council plan or forward planning for meetings. So my suggestion would be that those will be made available to members in terms of giving them all the dates, but I would suggest that it's not included within the IGB.
Within it, yeah.
Well, not included within this particular forward plan.
And just in terms of Councillor Wood's initial question about the police training.
Can I just check, could you maybe state that? Oh, I say, yep, and one of my colleagues, yeah, I'll let Gillian come in on that particular question.
Thank you, members. This is a busy time for schools, and we are hearing the placing appeals, but we have only one placing appeal left. We have managed to work closely with our parent body, and the numbers of appeals required this year are very low, so we only have one left, if that helps with the discussions.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Wood?
No, that's fine. Just I was thinking about the autumn intake, that was all.
Thank you. So in terms of, just in terms of the IGB question, Councillor Ferguson, obviously Vlad's indicated that given the nature of the IGB, we wouldn't normally include it, and is suggesting that we maybe don't, but that members would be informed of that separately.
Can I come back in? Thanks, Chair.
Yep.
Yeah, the same would apply for Swestrans. The problem is there's got to be 10 councillors involved in the IGP process, either as full members or substitute members, and they've got, other than the full IGB meetings, the board meetings, they've also got subcommittees. So there's a significant number of meetings that they run, and in the past I've had to choose between going to the IGB or going to a council committee. So it needs to be there, so when the IGB governance team contacts our governance team, that they know that there's something on there, and when our governance team looks at the calendar, that there's actually something ready in the diary for the IGB.
Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. Vlad's going to come back with a wee bit more detail.
Yeah, just clarification from my colleague that although it might not be included, and some of these organisations, including Swestrans, aren't included within this particular members' activity, what we do is we add it to Modern Gov, and that's added within that Modern Gov app, so all of it's included within that. That allows for obviously ascertaining by officers of both sides in terms of any clashes that there might be, so that hopefully is an answer in terms of how we deal with it on a practical level, rather than include outside bodies within the council's meeting plan.
Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Convener. Just looking through the calendar here, and I noticed that it's the 13th of September. We have audit, risk and scrutiny straight after finance, procurement and transformation. And I can remember in the last session there was a couple of instances where we had a major committee on before audit, risk and scrutiny, and it overran. There was a particular one with the Education Committee, which, well, we had the room in audit, risk and scrutiny, and there was a bit of a bun fight developed about who was actually going to get in. But the finance, procurement and transformation, they can have quite lengthy agendas, and it could overrun into the afternoon session. So I wonder if there's any flexibility within the calendar to take care of that sort of thing.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. And I know there's generally been a kind of presumption about having two major service committees on the same day, but obviously we have to try and still accommodate everything given the days that are available. I don't know if the team is able to take on board that and see if there's a possible way to manage that a wee bit better, just so it doesn't restrict anybody's access to the committees they need to attend.
Yeah, I think we can absolutely take that away and try and work around it, absolutely, and no issue about that. And we just need to find an appropriate date and time to accommodate both of them and to take on board the comment of having two in the same day.
Councillor Dempster and then Councillor Hislop.
Just in the same subject, Chair, it's not the first time as a member of a committee I've been asked to get out and stand outside and wait till the next committee comes in, does their business or decides, and it just causes absolute chaos. And I see on the following day in September there's planning applications in Annandale and Eskdale Divisional Licensing Board, and it may be that some of the members of the Licensing Board are actually planning committee members, so it's unreasonable to place them two committees together. And I think there was a decision taken some time ago that's obviously not being implemented, whereby a major service committee is not compromised by another committee being put on the same day. So I would hope that we relook at that and make sure every major committee is left with a complete day in which to deal with the business. Thank you.
So I think, yeah, it's a fair comment to make, and I think if officers can maybe take that feedback away, obviously there's a couple of examples given today, and see if we can find a suitable workaround where possible, and then update accordingly. I'm sure that'll come through in the invites that we'll start to receive. But yeah, if we can find a way, I'm sure officers will be able to be as flexible as possible.
Thanks, Leader.
Thank you. Sorry, and Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Leader. It was, Convener. It was to do with the fact that we don't have a planning committee for over 8 weeks during the recess. Previously, we have accommodated one, put one in that we can withdraw if we don't have any business, because we have, I think it's statutory indicators that you're meant to turn a planning application around in 8 weeks for domestic. Now, if there's not a meeting within those 8 weeks, we're actually going to, hit their figures by taking a decision today. Is there any way we could maybe slot one in there, and if nothing's required, we could actually take it out of the diary? Things like that, and your sort of licensing panels where there may be applications that can be dealt with under delegated authority but then need to come back to be ratified by members. It's more just the sort of process committees that would apply rather than possibly your policy committees, which could take the recess.
No, I think it's a fair point, and I would have sympathy with that. Vlad, do you want to maybe assist?
Yeah, I think the next planning committee is due to be the 29th of June, but I take your point about the recess and the need for the quasi-judicial functions that you mentioned to continue. So again, we'll take that away and we'll work on that, and we'll consult with our planning officers as well in terms of what they foresee as any potential issues during that time. So we'll come back to members with any additional meetings and any changes to what you've got in front of you.
don't see any other questions in the room. So taking on board the feedback from members about potential changes to the calendar, are we happy to leave it in the competent hands of officers and agree the recommendations? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for your patience. So item 10 then is the Licensing Scotland Act, Section 5 and Schedule 1, Election of Licensing Boards, report by Head of Governance and Assurance. So obviously we're required to hold an election of members of each of the 4 divisional licensing boards. Each board is required to have a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 10 members. And we had previously agreed to appoint 4 divisional licensing boards. It's up to those individual divisional licensing boards to appoint their convener at the first meeting. And there's also a requirement for members to undertake and pass some training before they carry out board duties. Vlad, you may want to add something about this, because obviously we might be a bit short in numbers, or at least we were until recently. So is there anything you'd like to speak to in terms of this report?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get hold of the latest nominations, if we call that. I am aware that we are short in at least 2 or 3 of those, and therefore in order to function we obviously need a minimum of 5, and so we need those volunteers to come forward in terms of all of them. There's no issue in terms of numbers, as I understand, because we've got up to 10 for each one of those. So in essence it's a request to volunteer to make sure that we get the minimum number, which is 5 for all of them. And as I said, I'm just trying to get hold of the numbers, okay, which are just been presented. So I think we've got 4 in Nitsdale board, and the Suretree we also require 1 more, and the same for Annandale and Eskdale board. Would you wish for me to read out just to clarify who's named within those? So in terms of Nitsdale board, we've got Councillor Beretti, Councillor Hislop, Councillor Slater and Councillor Stitt. Do we have any other volunteers? Councillor Carruthers.
Councillor Carruthers, do you want to come in?
Thanks, Convener. It's for the Annandale and Eskdale. If you take them individually, but I'm happy to go on the licence board in Annandale and Eskdale.
Thanks, Ian. Any other volunteers for Nithsdale Licensing Board?
If we're struggling for numbers, if I happen to be successful to sit in this deal, I could also sit in Stuart if we're struggling for numbers. We've done it before, I think.
Yep. Thanks, Councillor Stitt and Councillor Little.
I'm happy to sit on Nithsdale.
So I gather that sitting on 2 licensing boards, you would still have to sit 2 exams. I don't know if you, it's the same exam, I think, but you've put a different badge in it or something. But Vlad, I don't know if you can maybe confirm that. But for Councillor Stitt.
Yeah, I'll need to check that, and if we can avoid having to do the same exam twice, then of course. However, I'll check with the officers to see if that is possible. So, could I just confirm that we've got Councillor Ian Carruthers for Annandale and Eskdale Board, Councillor Little for Nithsdale Board, and did I catch anyone for Stuartree?
See Councillor Dougie Campbell.
Just double checking. I thought I had volunteered for that, but just to double check. If not, yeah, I'll do it. Yep.
Okay. And Councillor Mcgregor.
Councillor Mcgregor.
Yeah, I'd be quite happy to add to the numbers in Annandale and Nithsdale and sit on the board.
Thank you. So just to summarise then, it looks like we've got a minimum of 5 for each licensing board area. I don't know if you maybe just want to confirm the names for the benefit of members. And I see John Campbell's got his hand up as well.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Yeah, I'm happy to put my name forward for Nithsdale.
Okay, thank you. So with that, can we confirm what those members are like, and then we can press on? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just run through that. So we've got Wigton Board, and we've got Councillor Dashbar, Councillor Justy, Councillor Hagman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Inglis and Councillor McCammon. Nitsteel Board, Councillor Beretti, Councillor Hislop, Councillor Slater, Councillor Stitt, Councillor Little and Councillor John Campbell. Stewardship Board, Councillor Howie, Councillor Lowe, Councillor McFarlane, Councillor Young and Councillor Doogie Campbell. Annandale and Esdale, Councillor Davis, Councillor Drybar, Councillor Jameson, Councillor Thompson, Councillor Ian Carruthers and Councillor Mcgregor.
So if members are happy with that, we can agree that we've elected the membership of the 4 divisional licensing boards and that they're all have the minimum number, which is good. Obviously, I'm sure more volunteers are always welcome if need be, but at 2.2 then, we're effectively noting that there's mandatory training which all board members, whether you've done it before or not, you still have to go through the training. So we'll be looking forward to the 2 sessions that have been organised for this Friday or Tuesday the 7th of June, and for people who've got their name on the volunteers list, they'll either have a date in the diary already, or if you've just volunteered today, you'll get an invitation shortly. Councillor Drysdale and then Councillor Stitt.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It was just to ask a question with regards to up-and-coming events that are possibly being run with regards to the Jubilee and so on. Is our timing plan the same as other councils here, or might this cause delays with licensing applications being approved or not, as the case may be? Maybe that's something I need to take up at a later date, but it's certainly something that's been flagged up at the moment by some constituents on groups that are really needing licences quite quickly. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll pass over to Vlad for that, because he might be able to give you the detail.
We can take that offline in terms of discussing any particular queries that have come in. Absolutely. In terms of, I am aware that there have been maybe some questions and queries in regards to extended hours, and again we've got a process for that and turnaround of a couple of weeks, so I would hope that we've got the measures in place to deal with anything coming in, but if there are any issues, please let me know.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So on that basis then, oh sorry, Councillor Stitt.
Just for information, Chair, Convener, Friday's session, the 27th, oversubscribed, so the next session, on 7th of June, they wanted me to shift for the Friday to another, but I couldn't because I'm on holiday after that. But Sharon said the Friday one's oversubscribed.
No, that's helpful, and I don't know if we may need to book another session, but I'm sure we'll try and accommodate all members in the training. Thank you. Okay, members, so are we happy then with item 10 to effectively elect and note the licensing board? Yeah, okay, thank you. Appointments and roles to outside bodies is item 11. There's a number of recommendations we've been asked to agree here, some of which involve withdrawing delegation to various committees, including Economy and Resources. Just get my script. There's an additional recommendation 2.14 to be added to the report, which seeks an appointment to Scotland Excel. They are due to have their first meeting taking place on the 17th of June, which is before the next meeting of Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee, from which the members would normally be drawn. There's 4 bodies that we need to withdraw a delegation from: Nithsdale Area Committee, Economy and Resources Committee, Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee, and that's detailed under 2.4, 2.5, 2.6 and 2.14 if we include the Scotland Excel one. Are we happy to withdraw the delegations? Okay, thank you. Councillor Dryborough?
Yeah, thanks. You're happy to withdraw the delegation. If that's the case, can I move that the Labour SNP independent slate is moved, detailing the appointments to roles and the outside bodies to be agreed?
Thank you. Councillor Mcgregor.
Thank you, Convener. I think, as with item 8, we'd be very happy to look at the administration's slate for item 11, but I would ask for a recess before considering any amendment, if that's okay. And Archie will maybe get his sandwich then.
And Councillor Brodie.
Second, Councillor Driver.
I think, sorry, Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I was going to suggest that we do not withdraw delegation from the Nestdale Area Committee for the Moorheads Hospital Trust and maybe bring a paper to that particular area committee, because the 6 delegates actually have to come from the town borough as opposed to the whole of the Nestdale Area Committee. So it may be better if we get the proper paper brought to that area committee.
I take the point, Councillor Campbell, but I think Vlad maybe wants to come in. He's just sort of presented me with a little bit of updated advice, so if you want to explain that, Vlad.
Yeah, the reason why it was included, and having discussed it with colleagues, is that they have an AGM tomorrow, and therefore the request is obviously that there's appointments so that we could have representatives at that AGM.
Thanks, Convener. I'll withdraw my remarks.
Okay, thank you. I think, sorry, Councillor Wood.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I was to ask, is that the list of all of the outside bodies that elected members can be represented on? Or are there some omitted? Because there's 2 that I know that are no longer there that they used to be represented. For example, the Supplier Development Business Partnership and the Industrial Communities Alliance. Are they coming on a different paper?
Yeah, so these are the ones that we're required to do today, and there will be, you know, as you'll know, with area committees and various service committees, there's also appointments to outside bodies from those, and I think there's maybe a few others that will come to a future committee, but we'll pick up all the ones that aren't on here, either at the next full council or at the service committees. Can I suggest then, if we can circulate the proposed slate and basically have lunch and come back at 1:45. Thank you. members, that's gone 1:45. Hopefully everybody's feeling a wee bit more relaxed now that they've had a bit of lunch. And everybody's had sight of the slate, so we can hopefully get on with business then. We are quorate, so we'll just go through. So we removed delegation, respectively, to consider this on block, if you like. And we've got a proposal in front of us. Does anybody have an alternative to that? Councillor Mcgregor.
Thank you, Convener. No, I don't have an alternative. I'm relatively comfortable with the outside body appointments as are. I think it might have been quite a good thing to perhaps have had me as Leader of the Opposition as the number 2 on the South of Scotland costs, but I'm not going to push it to a vote. I would have hoped that that would have been a thing that you perhaps would have conceded would have been good for the Council. But as I say, I won't push that to the vote. I'm very happy to populate the majority of the Conservative group's names, if that would be useful. Over to you, Convener.
No, thank you, because obviously the final slate will have to include the names of the respective councillors across the piece. So if you've got a list of those names, maybe that would be helpful to get included.
Okay, so for the Community Planning Partnership, it'll be myself and Maureen Johnston. For the rep, it will be David Ingalls with Malcolm Johnson as sub. I'll take the 4th place at COSLA Convention. Swestrands would be Andrew Wood and Maureen Johnson with Ian Crothers and Ivor Hislop as subs, and we will need to confirm the IJB if that's okay, because we've got a couple of members that have had to leave.
Thanks, Councillor Mcgregor. In terms of what we need to do as a council, does that satisfy you for the moment in terms of our governance arrangements?
Yeah, that's fine, as long as all members are clear what's been proposed, which it appears that that's the case and there's agreement, then we proceed. Obviously, there's still some positions to be filled, so what we'll do as officers is we'll clarify what those positions are and recirculate them to the various groups.
Thank you. So in terms of the business for today, the one thing that wasn't populated, I don't think, was the Moorheads Hospital Trust. Have we got any detail on where we are with that?
I think they've made the request that I think maybe traditionally is the Provost that attends, but the AGM is tomorrow, so it's obviously quite an imminent matter. It might be that the Council's not in a position to put representatives to this next meeting and is for further consideration thereafter. We're happy to go back to them to explain that if that's the case. Otherwise, if there are any volunteers, we would note them and then obviously make the arrangements for tomorrow's AGM.
Councillor Mcgregor.
I think there was a wee bit of clarity required about what the criteria for sitting on that was and where people had to live. And there was a bit of ambiguity around that, so that was why we weren't able to make a definitive on that.
I mean, I think given the sort of mood in the room today about that particular issue, I think it's probably, I'm happy to go with Vlad's advice in terms of we're not able to populate that today. So if we can go back to the organisation and circulate the relevant information to members so they can make a more informed decision as and when. So I'm just getting a suggestion that we could appoint the Provost at this time. Now, whether or not the Provost is going to be available tomorrow, because it's a bit of a late call for an outside body to demand us to be there. But certainly, as a name on paper, Provost, would you be willing to accept that potentially, or would the Provost be able to accept that, and then we can deal with the rest later? Councillor Dryborough.
Yes, Chair. I'm just wondering if there's any need to any, but because it's an AGM, is there a requirement for an elected member to be there for Dumfries and Galloway Council? That might be what they're saying, you know.
Okay, can I defer to the governance officer, because this is clearly elected members don't know the answer to this.
If I could come in, yeah, I think discussions that were had maybe in the interval there is one of the things we need to absolutely thrash out with the trust is their terms of reference, their constitution, and ensure that we are very clear as to what their request is. At this point, I think we're not clear, and we'll take that away and work with them in that regard, and I'll make a point of getting in touch. I believe as solicitors that run the trust, and therefore I'm happy to have that conversation directly with them. That will and bring it back obviously for members' approval thereafter. At this stage we don't have that information, so I can't provide that unless anyone who's maybe sat within that particular trust is able to give any further information on it.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'd seen Councillor Campbell's hand up and then Councillor Little.
Do you want me to come in, Convener?
Yeah, if you'd like.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just on the point that Councillor Mcgregor was making about living in the ward, it's not living in the ward. If you're an elected member whose ward falls within the boundary of the borough, and then you can nominate people from that particular ward. On the other point about the provost being there for the AGM, they've actually had a couple of AGMs with the provost, or none of the councillors have actually been in attendance. They just nominate one of the other trustees who are on that board to chair the meeting. So it doesn't actually have to be the provost at that time, just for a bit of clarity.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was just going to say that it's the provost, from my understanding from previously been on that trust, that it's the provost that chairs the meeting, which is why they probably want tomorrow. I'm happy to be on it, but I am not able to go tomorrow due to we've got extensive training still going on. But I'm happy if someone could sort of liaise with the trust to sort of relay this information, but I'm happy to be on it.
I mean, I think that seems to be about as far as we're going to get, but Councillor Ferguson, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wonder if it's actually been competently called, this AGM, because the part of the Constitution that I've been aware, because this will be 10 years I've been on it per se, is we've had no notice, any councillors have had any notice in AGM. So is the AGM tomorrow competently called? Is a question that only they can answer. I get that, but it's something we need to consider today before we commit our councillors to a meeting that may not actually be competently called.
Well, just to bring this to a close for today, anyway, I think we've got the volunteer from Councillor Little that if need be she could step up, but isn't available to attend tomorrow because of other commitments, which is fair enough. However, so that's one name on the list effectively, but clearly there's a bit of work to do with the trust, going back to them to find out exactly what their requirements are and what we'd be expected to do. It seems to be a bit short notice, but if we're happy to just go forward on that basis for today, then we'll allow Vlad and his team to liaise with the group and then update the relevant elected members and bring a report back as required. Is that fair for members? Okay, Vlad, are you happy with that? Okay. Thank you then. So effectively we've agreed on block item 11. Thanks very much. So if we move on then to item 12, that's the elected member induction and training. That's report by Head of Governance and Assurance. And this is really just to advise elected members of the feedback from the induction training and the development programme for the period 23rd of May onwards for elected members and for future arrangements. Vlad, as always, is here to assist members with questions, and perhaps, given that we're being asked to consider the initial feedback from the induction training that we've all undergone, and also to note the training and development for elected members programmed for the upcoming period, and also to note that the further development programme for elected members for the period from August. Vlad, I don't know if you want to come in and maybe just give a sense of the type of feedback we've had so far because obviously there's been a lot happening in the last couple of weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll provide a brief which has been collected by my colleagues. As indicated in paragraph 3.2 of the report, the 2-week member induction session took place from Monday the 9th of May to Friday the 20th of May. We had an average of 20 members at the 14 sessions, and during the 2 weeks 81% of members attended 2 or more sessions. After the introduction to Dumfries and Galloway Council session on the first day, the most popular was the different roles of elected members. The feedback overall was very positive. For example, the partnership working session had all responses in the highest rating for all 4 questions. Given time for members to discuss issues was particularly important in planning these sessions, so the high scores that this received in all the feedback was immensely reassuring. Presenters have also highlighted that the dialogue between new members looking at things in a different way alongside the contributions of returning members' experiences meant we had some very constructive conversation. Some of the comments on the feedback forms included the Code of Conduct, Member Officer Protocol, excellent session, wish we'd had that when I started, support to elected members, immensely valuable and will help me a great deal in my role. Roles of elected members, very succinct and straightforward, well presented, I enjoyed that. There were, as members will recall, some issues with technology, in particular Wi-Fi, during a couple of these, not within our gift, unfortunately, but generally the hybrid approach with some members online and some in Council Hall went smoothly. Follow-up actions are now being implemented by the responsible services, and as indicated in the Chief Exec's email on Friday, all the attendances, presentations and summary of issues raised and with the feedback will be on the members section of the website, so can be accessed by members who were unable to be present or as a refresher at a later date for other members. During the forthcoming ward orientation sessions, on a follow-up contact, if you're not able to be present, there'll be an opportunity to reflect on what has already taken place and any additional information or sessions that you would like, so that any support members need is made available on a shared or individual basis. That's the summary.
Thanks very much, Vlad. Very comprehensive. Councillor Hagman, you had your hand up before.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I just wanted to put on record really my thanks to all the staff and officers, the IT and the administration support. I think we do pride ourselves on being a listening council. We've won national awards on listening and taking things forward, and certainly my experience this time round has been markedly different to the first time round, so I just wanted that to be acknowledged. I think absolutely the fact that we've got all our slides on the website is really good, and I think we need to acknowledge that we didn't have any of that last time round, just even 5 years. So I'm really confident with the team, and I want to put my thanks down on record to you all, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments from members? With that then, are we happy to note we've considered the initial feedback as presented. We can note the training and development for elected members programme for the period upcoming, and also at 2.3 note the further training and development programme for elected members for the period August 22 to December 22, and that will be presented to a future meeting of full council in June, and also to put on record our thanks to the team for developing the training in the way they have. Agreed? Okay, thank you very much. So that takes us on to minutes. Item 13, that's a minute of the meeting of 31st of March 2022. Are we happy to approve? Thank you. And item 14, minute of the meeting of 5th of April 2022. Are we happy to approve that one? Agreed. Thank you. And then we've got item 15, which is the minutes for approval. And there's been a sort of list sent out to members who are returning, I think, which effectively lists all the minutes that we need to approve prior to the election. So I'll just go through them. So Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee, 23rd of March 2022. I'm happy to move that.
Happy to second, yeah.
Thank you. Castle Douglas Common Good Fund Subcommittee, 23rd of March 22.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Civic Government Licensing Panel, 23rd of March 2022.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Civic Government Licensing Panel of 28th of April 2022.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Thanks again, Ian. Communities Committee, 22nd of March 2022.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Economy and Resources Committee, 17th of March 2022.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Thank you. Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee, 29th of March 2022.
I'm delighted to move, thank you.
I'm happy to second. And Harbour Subcommittee, 11th of March 2022.
And I'm also happy to move that one, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Brodie. And the Harbour Subcommittee, no, sorry, I beg your pardon. Nithsdale Area Committee, 25th of March 2022.
Happy to move, Leader.
Happy to second.
And Planning Applications Committee, 30th of March 2022.
Happy to move, Convener.
Happy to second.
And finally, Social Work Services Committee, 24th of March 2022. I'm happy to move that.
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. The final item for today is any other business deemed urgent by the Chairman. I have no items of urgent business. However, for information, obviously, just in terms of today, there will be reports coming back in terms of what we agreed at item 3. That'll be coming to the next council meeting. But before I close the meeting, can I remind all members to provide their nominations for all the committee spaces by close of play tomorrow? Oh, sorry. Councillor McCammon.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't want to interrupt. It was just really if we could hear a few words from Linda, since she's been appointed to such an important role. We've not heard you speak yet, and I've never met you.
Councillor Dorward, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Councillor McCann. I'm now the co-leader of Dumfries and Galloway Council. Lovely to meet you. And thanks for the opportunity of saying a few words. That's really nice of you. So I'd like to say thank you to all of you for your welcome as a new elected member, and to elected members and officers of Dumfries and Galloway Council for their welcome and assistance. For me, this is like a wonderful day for us, but it's a wonderful day for the people of Dumfries and Galloway. I think that's my most important point here at the moment. So listening to everybody and what's happened today is collectively, as elected members, we've demonstrated that we can work together to build a future for this wonderful area. I think that's really important to consider going forward. We're doing politics differently, that's very, very true, but in a way that ensures we harness the skills, knowledge and experience of all 43 elected members. With a great mix of experience and fresh idea elected members, it's about the people of Dumfries and Galloway, through the unprecedented challenges that we all face, which include the cost of living crisis and recovering from a global pandemic. And that will be front and centre of what this administration does. So I welcome the opportunity to say hello. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward, and thank you, Councillor McCammon, for inviting Linda to say a few words. Very remiss of me. With that, and with that appropriate way to summarise, I think, what we're trying to do, that concludes our business for today. Thank you for your contributions.
Thank you, Convener.